They say the Alpha King must marry for peace, not for passion. So when the council chose another woman for him, I didn't scream or fall apart. I swallowed the wound like a loyal subject, pretending my heart wasn't breaking in public view. Everyone believed I was just human, fragile, ordinary, forgettable. No one suspected what I truly was to him. Not even him. I should have begged for a chance. I should have pleaded for his love. But instead, I offered something far more pathetic and far more dangerous. I stepped into his light, lifted my throat, and whispered, "Mark me before you reject me forever." I thought the bite would free me. A clean scar, a clean exit, a quiet death of everything I felt. But when his mouth met my skin, I tasted salt, heat, and the savage truth neither of us could escape. The mark wasn't goodbye. It was the spark that set fate on fire. The stone walls of the Sovereign Wing felt like they were pressing the air out of my lungs. I was Rhys, 32, Alpha King of the Obsidian Peaks, and I was about to commit the gravest betrayal known to our kind, rejecting my true mate. It was the night before the mandatory state wedding, a bleak political maneuver enforced by the council edict. Peace among the warring packs demanded I proceed with the marriage to Jacinda Hayes, 30, the cruel, ambitious daughter of a rival Alpha. War or a loveless political alliance. I had chosen the alliance, and now I had to pay the price. I stood by the vast, chilled window, the icy grip of duty replacing the fire in my veins. Then, she was there. Avery Stone, 30, was perceived by the entire pack, and by me, based on the deceitful reports, as a fragile, wolfless human. She shouldn't have been able to breach the perimeter guards, but she did. Her scent, usually a gentle balm of summer rain and cedar, was now laced with an unbearable sorrow that had my alpha wolf roaring a silent, desperate plea within my chest. She didn't run to me. She didn't weep or rage. Instead, she stood perfectly still, her light brown hair catching the faint moonlight, radiating a terrifying, cold acceptance. "I won't cause war, Rhys," she whispered, her voice surprisingly steady. "I know what you must do for the Obsidian Peaks. I will keep my promise. After tonight, I vanish into the human world. I will be forgotten, and you will reign in peace with your queen." Every word was a shard of glass ripping through the mating bond, but I held my mask of stone. I had to. If I touched her, if I showed weakness, I would jeopardize everything my ancestors had built. "Avery," I managed, the name catching on the lump in my throat. "Go now. It is safer." She took a slow, deliberate step forward, crossing the opulent, cold marble floor. Her eyes, usually soft pools of amber, were hard-edged with pain. "Don't let me go empty-handed," she requested, her single request cutting deeper than any threat of war. "If I can't be your queen, let me be your mate for just this one night." My control fractured. The air in the room thickened, charged with the potent desire and sorrow that only true mates can generate. "I can't," I graveled, gripping the window frame until my knuckles whitened. The bite must be a scar of rejection. It must fade, proving the bond was weak, proving I am worthy of the alliance with the Ironwood Dominion. She closed the distance, her small hand pressing against the hard expanse of my chest, right above my heart, right above the dormant, phantom ache of the mark I carried. "Then give me that scar," she challenged, her vulnerability replaced by a sudden, fierce resolve. "Mark me. Leave your scar so that, when I am alone, and the pack believes I was nothing, I know you were real."
The raw desperation was intoxicating. My alpha wolf lost the battle against duty. Mine. The internal roar was deafening. The idea of her walking away unmarked, unbound, shattered the last semblance of my control. If I had to abandon her, I would ensure that every moment she spent alone, she would remember the reason she was banished. I moved with the speed of a predator, caging her against the cold wall. The intended scar of rejection, a gentle, symbolic closing of the bond, was obliterated by the primal need to claim. I lost myself completely to the sorrow, the duty, and the overwhelming scent of her truth.
My teeth sank deep into the delicate curve of her left shoulder. It was not a kiss. It was not gentle. It was savage, desperate, and possessive. A sealing bite meant to brand her as mine, even as I was publicly handing myself over to another. Her scream was muffled against my neck, immediately followed by a guttural, desperate cry of acceptance. We fell into the frenetic chaos of that solitary night, claiming two halves of a whole, desperately trying to weld themselves back together before being torn apart forever. The raw intensity of the bond, ignited by the bite, consumed the room, the castle, and the very air around us. When the pale light of dawn crept through the high windows of the sovereign wing, I woke with a gasp, the metallic tang of dried blood still sharp in the air. My muscles ached, but the euphoria of the claiming warred with the immediate cold dread of the duty that awaited me. The bed was empty. The scent was faint, almost completely cleansed. Avery Stone had kept her promise. She had vanished without a trace, leaving nothing but the deep, throbbing ache of the new mark on my soul. 5 years. 5 years of frozen silence. The mandatory marriage to Jacinda Hayes was, predictably, a desolate failure. Loveless, icy, and, worst of all for an Alpha King, barren. Jacinda carried resentment like a cloak, and the lack of a true heir left the Obsidian Peaks pack suffering, their morale plummeting. The council edict had bought us fragile peace, but at the cost of our future. I was in a distant territory, negotiating land treaties during a particularly tense diplomatic mission in 2024, when it struck me. It was a sharp, focused, searing pain, originating from the depth of my own mating mark, the mark that should have been numb with rejection. It was the phantom ache, a distress call from the bond I had tried to sever. I hadn't felt anything like it since the day Avery walked away. The pain was quickly followed by a rush of scent, impossibly strong, impossibly familiar, yet subtly changed. It was Avery's scent, but beneath the cedar and rain lay something sharp, wild, and incredibly powerful, like ozone after a lightning strike. I abandoned the mission without a word, following the ancient, compelling pull of the bond. It led me far from the manicured territories of the Pax, across the human world, until I reached a remote, discreet city on the coast, Crestline Harbor. The scent trail terminated at a small, unassuming 2-story house nestled near the bluff overlooking the ocean. My heart hammered against my ribs, frantic with dread and hope. 5 years of self-loathing crystallized into this single moment. I phased, maintaining my human form, yet my alpha essence was surging, demanding entry. I didn't knock. I shoved the simple wooden door open. The room was bathed in the warm, afternoon light. Avery stood near a bookshelf. She looked different, stronger, somehow less fragile than the woman I remembered. Her curves were softer, her posture resilient, but the pain lingered deep in her eyes, and she was not alone. Clinging tightly to the edge of her skirt was a small, agile child, no older than 4. He didn't cry or hide. Instead, he tilted his head, studying me with unnerving concentration. The air froze in my lungs. Ethan Sawyer, 4, had eyes that were unmistakable. They were not my cool gray, nor Avery's soft amber. They were blazing, intense gold, the unquestionable genetic proof of high alpha lineage. My son. I took a trembling step forward, the world tilting off its axis. Avery turned fully, positioning the boy slightly behind her. Her expression was one of deep, painful acceptance. The same look she wore 5 years ago, but overlaid now with the fierce, protective determination of a mother. "Rhys," she stated simply, her voice devoid of shock, as if she always knew this day would come. My gaze was locked on the boy, the golden eyes confirming the devastation of my folly. But then, my eyes snagged on her left shoulder, exposed by the simple cotton shirt she wore, the mating mark. It hadn't faded into the pale silver scar of rejection I had demanded. It hadn't healed into an invisible memory. Instead, it was impossibly bright, pulsing gently beneath the surface of her skin, glowing with brilliant, undeniable gold. The force of the realization hit me like a physical blow, sending me staggering back against the doorframe. The mark wasn't a brand of ownership. It was a beacon of power. Avery was never merely a human. My desperate, savage claiming bite had not rejected her. It had awakened her. That potent scent I tracked to Crestline Harbor, the one laced with ozone and power, was the manifestation of her dormant true nature. She was the white wolf, the rare, almost mythical creature destined to be the true queen, the one whose presence ensures the prosperity of the pack. She was my destined mate, the only one capable of giving our people a true, powerful heir. I had been forced to choose between war and my mate, but the council edict, based on faulty assumptions, had forced me to reject the very solution they sought. I had cast away my queen to appease a rival alpha whose daughter was barren, damning the obsidian peaks to slow decline. The glowing gold mark proved it all. Avery Stone had been sacrificed, vanished into the human world not as a fragile ex-lover, but as a newly awakened queen, carrying the legacy of the obsidian peaks in the form of a 4-year-old alpha with my golden eyes. I hadn't saved my people. I had condemned them the moment I let her walk away, branded by the gold of her true destiny. I stood there, a broken alpha king, facing the impossible cost of my duty, a king without his queen, looking at the son I never knew, realizing the ultimate truth. I had rejected everything I was meant to protect. The gold was blinding, not the artificial glare of the obsidian peak's opulence, but a living, breathing fire pulsed beneath Avery's skin. It was the antithesis of the pale, ghostly silver I had intended for the scar of rejection. That scar should have spoken of a broken bond, a failed connection, a duty fulfilled. Instead, this gold shrieked of destiny, of a bond that had not merely been sealed on that solitary night, but fundamentally ignited. I felt the phantom ache in my own mark, a violent, demanding pulse, mirroring the brilliance on her shoulder. The bond was whole, more than whole. It was terrifyingly powerful. My voice was a raw, guttural rasp, unrecognizable even to my alpha self. "What is this?" Avery held her ground, shielding the boy. "Ethan, my son." His tiny fingers clutched the fabric near the glowing mark. He was the consequence, the undeniable proof of my catastrophic error. "The truth, Rhys," she said, her amber eyes now holding an unnerving clarity. "You always believed what the council told you. You believed the reports that defined me as wolfless, as weak, as human." I pushed away from the doorframe, my muscles coiling tight. The need to touch her, to verify the gold's reality, nearly unbearable. The bite. What did it do? It awoke me. Her voice was soft, laced with a weary acceptance that was far more damning than anger. "You asked for a scar, a final, painful severance. But your wolf, he wouldn't allow it. When your teeth sank in, it didn't reject the bond. It claimed it. It tore down the wall I didn't even know I had. I wasn't just human, Rhys. I was dormant. A white wolf. The white wolf. The almost mythical progenitor lineage, said to be the only true balance to the Alpha King. The one whose life force ensures the prosperity of the entire pack. I had read the legends, dismissed them as fantasy, yet the living proof stood before me. A queen who radiated power and carried a 4-year-old heir with my golden eyes. I rejected the White Wolf Queen. The realization was a heavy, suffocating weight. Jacinda, my barren, resentful queen, reigning in a desolate castle while the true life force of the Obsidian Peaks stood exiled in a remote human coastal town, raising my son in secrecy. "Why did you leave the mark to glow?" I demanded, taking another step. "Why didn't you hide it? Shift and hide it?" A flicker of something close to pity crossed her face. "I left before dawn, remember? I kept my promise. When I woke up on the road, miles from the Obsidian Peaks, I thought I was dying. The pain was immense, and the mark felt like it was consuming me. It wasn't until weeks later, when the true shift began, that I realized what had happened. It won't fade, Rhys. It is the signature of my nature. It's what keeps him safe." Her eyes dipped to Ethan, a silent pledge of protection. The council edict that had forced my hand was designed to maintain peace, but the underlying fear was always the purity of the alpha line. If the council knew that my true mate, a white wolf, existed, carrying an alpha heir with blazing golden eyes, they wouldn't stop until they had her and the boy under their control. "You should have come back," I insisted, the old possessiveness flaring, drowning the shame. "When you realized what you were, you should have returned. You are our queen. Ethan is the future of the Obsidian Peaks." Avery laughed, a low, desolate sound that scraped against my nerves. "And face Jacinda? Face the king who chose duty over destiny? You think I would bring a newborn alpha, our son, into that cold political chaos? You rejected me to save your people from war. I stayed away to save our son from you and your duties. Ethan, sensing the shift in my emotional tempest, buried his face deeper into Avery's side, but his golden eyes remained fixed on mine, unwavering, assessing. He was an alpha in miniature, already radiating a subtle, inherent power that even I, Rhys Calder, king of the Obsidian Peaks, could feel. He was more wolf than I was in that moment, unburdened by years of political sacrifice. I thought of my existence over the past 5 years, the vast, luxurious chill of the sovereign wing, shared with a woman who hated me as much as I resented her. Jacinda had done her duty, playing the part of the Alpha Queen, but she offered no warmth, no solace, and most critically, no heir. Our marriage was a desolate failure, a political wasteland. The Obsidian Peaks were suffering. The lack of a true successor cast a shadow over our future. The alliance I had fought so hard to secure was crumbling under the strain of internal unrest and fear. All for nothing. I had traded my true future for a hollow peace that was now dissolving, while the very solution I needed had been living here, thriving, waiting. Jacinda is barren, I heard myself admit, the words tasting like ash. The marriage is worthless. The peace we bought is fragile, Avery. The pack needs you. They need their future king. Avery didn't even flinch. I know what Jacinda is. I watch the news, Rhys. I know your pack is weakening, but my priority is Ethan. Here, he is safe. He is just Ethan Sawyer. In the Obsidian Peaks, he would be a political pawn, a target for every rival alpha who resents your bloodline, including the Ironwood Dominion. The cruelty of her statement sliced through me because it was absolute truth. My rejection hadn't just saved her from war, it had protected her from the consequences of being queen. That mark, I said, pointing a shaking finger at the brilliant gold against her skin. It never faded. It grew. It is demanding that I reclaim you. That bond is screaming. You cannot deny the mate pull now that your wolf is awake. The tension in the room was a palpable, dangerous entity. The ozone scent, sharp and electric, intensified as her inner wolf responded to the challenge. I am not denying the mate pull, Avery countered, her eyes flashing gold for a brief, stunning instant. I am denying the king who discarded me. The bond remains, yes, but trust, Rhys, is gone. You taught me 5 years ago that duty comes first, that I was expendable for the sake of your peace. That lesson is permanently etched, deeper than any mark. The words were a brutal rejection, far more painful than the one I had tried to inflict upon her on that fateful night. I need you to come home, I pleaded, the Alpha King reduced to a desperate, broken man. I will tell the council. I will repudiate Jacinda. I will weather the war. We will face the Ironwood Dominion together. We must. She took a slow, deep breath, anchoring herself, her hand protectively settling on Ethan's head. You should have thought of that 5 years ago, before you made your choice, she stated firmly. I vanished. I built a life here, away from the politics and the blood. Ethan has known nothing but quiet safety. I will not trade his innocence for your crown, Rhys. She stepped sideways, maneuvering the boy further away from my reach. The movement broke the invisible, agonizing line between us. You asked for a mark before you left, I reminded her, clinging to the memory, the desperate closeness of that night. A promise that I was real. That mark is real, Avery, and it binds us forever. It binds us to tragedy, nothing more, she whispered. That scar reminds me that you were real, yes, but it also reminds me that your rejection was real too, and I will never put myself, or my son, in the position to be rejected again. I watched, helpless, as she gently pushed Ethan toward a back hallway. The boy hesitated, turning one last time. His golden eyes, mirroring the mark on her shoulder, burned into my soul. They held the future of my lineage, the prosperity of my kingdom, and the damning evidence of my folly. Avery did not look back at me. She simply followed her son, the glowing gold mark receding into the shadows of the human house. I stood there, king of the Obsidian Peaks, ruler of mountains and forests, utterly paralyzed by the small, empty silence of Crestline Harbor. I had tracked the phantom ache, followed the ozone scent, and found my queen, only to discover that the price of my duty was permanent exile from the two people who mattered most. I had abandoned a human, only to awaken a queen. I had sought peace, only to discover I had created the greatest political wound possible. The glowing gold mark was not a beacon for me to follow. It was a permanent, burning testament to everything I had tragically thrown away. I had rejected the solution, the heir and the queen, and now I was left alone, haunted by the realization that I had condemned the Obsidian Peaks not to war, but to a slow, inevitable death without its true, destined monarch. The vastness of my kingdom felt suddenly tiny, meaningless, and entirely barren. The king of the Obsidian Peaks stood trapped between two realities: the empty silence of a human town and the deafening roar of his own failure. Rhys pressed his clenched fists against the peeling paint of the doorway, the wood groaning slightly in protest. The ozone scent, the unmistakable signature of the white wolf, was already dissipating, mocking his slow reaction. Avery had walked away, and with her, she had taken the light, the future, and the last shred of Rhys' political legitimacy. 5 years. 5 years of calculated sacrifice, of cold political maneuvering, of sleeping beside a Queen Jacinda whose very presence felt like dry earth, and all of it based on a flimsy council edict and a deeply flawed assessment of his true mate. The reports had labeled Avery wolfless, a delicate human incapable of surviving the harsh realities of shifters' politics. They had been catastrophically, damningly wrong. The mating mark on his neck pulsed violently, an internal tremor mirroring the golden brilliance he had seen on Avery's shoulder. The bond was complete. It screamed at him to follow, to force her back, to drag her to the Obsidian Peaks and assert his alpha claim. But the moment he allowed that raw, primal possessiveness to surface, he heard her voice again, sharp with truth. "I am denying the king who discarded me." He knew then that force would only shatter the fragile connection entirely. He needed strategy, not brute strength. He had been tricked by duty once. He would not let instinct ruin his last chance. Rhys pushed off the doorframe, his dark clothes blending into the shadows of Crestline Harbor's quiet Main Street. This town felt ridiculously small, exposed and vulnerable, a perfect hiding spot for a woman who needed to vanish. She had chosen isolation over opulence, safety over status. He thought again of Ethan, those eyes, the unmistakable blazing gold of a pure alpha heir, the kind of eyes that demanded obedience, even from a distance. The genetic inheritance was so potent it was almost unbelievable. Jacinda, for all her ambition and royal lineage from the Ironwood Dominion, had yielded nothing. Her barrenness had become a symbol of his pack's decline, a physical manifestation of the curse placed upon him by the Council's ultimatum. The Obsidian Peaks were dying, not from external war, but from the lack of a true destined king. Rhys Wolf, usually a disciplined, calculating entity, thrashed within him, throwing off sparks of blinding fury. Our queen, our heir. The king had made his choice, and the wolf was paying the ultimate price. He followed the faintest traces of Avery's scent, not toward confrontation, but toward surveillance. He needed to understand the environment she had built for their son. He found the modest house again, tucked away behind a curtain of dense oak trees, facing the distant, churning gray of the ocean. It was safe. It was anonymous. It was everything the Obsidian Peaks was not. He moved silently, a shadow dissolving into the late afternoon gloom. His honed alpha senses pierced the thin walls. He didn't want to break in. He only wanted to witness. He crept up to a side window, carefully pulling aside a leaf of ivy that obscured his view. Inside, the scene was utterly domestic, a painful contrast to the cold grandeur of the sovereign wing. Avery was seated at a worn wooden table, helping Ethan stack small, colorful blocks. Ethan's small hand, sturdy and agile, reached for a yellow block. He was talking, a quiet, focused murmur that Rhys couldn't quite decipher, but the tone was enough. It was the sound of childish contentment, security, and warmth. And then Avery laughed. It was not the desperate, brittle laugh she had offered him moments earlier. It was soft, rich, and effortless. A sound Rhys had heard only in the fleeting moments of their secret courtship, before duty became a vice. The sound resonated deep in his chest, hitting a hollow spot he hadn't known existed. That laugh was his birthright, stolen by his own hand. Rhys watched as Ethan, frustrated by a toppling tower, leaned his head against Avery's shoulder. The light in the room shifted, catching the bare skin where the mating mark rested. Even across the distance, Rhys could see the undeniable, brilliant glow of the gold. It was a sun in miniature, a physical confirmation that his entire reality was a devastating lie. He had expected the mark to be a sad silver scar, a testament to a bond that failed. Instead, it was a brand of potent power, proof that his wolf had fought his king, and the wolf had won the battle to claim her essence, even if the king failed to claim her life. The bite, intended as a final, cruel kindness, a mark before rejection, had instead been the catalyst for the white wolf's awakening. The phantom ache in Rhys's own mark spiked, a searing white-hot demand that threatened to bring him to his knees right there in the dirt. It wasn't merely pain, it was the agonizing separation of two completed halves. He must have them. The decision crystallized, sharp and immediate, pushing away the last vestiges of shame and doubt. He could not leave Crestline Harbor without a plan, a vow that was stronger than any council edict. He watched Avery smooth Ethan's hair, her gaze filled with fierce, protective love. He realized she wouldn't come back for the crown, for the wealth, or even for him, if it jeopardized Ethan's safety. She would only return if the entire political landscape of the Obsidian Peaks was destroyed and remade, and that is what Rhys would do. He retreated from the window, melting back into the shadows of the coastal town. He would face the council edict. He would face the humiliation of repudiating Jacinda. He would face the unified rage of the Ironwood Dominion, led by Jacinda's powerful father. War was inevitable now, but it would be a war fought for the right reasons. For his mate, for his son, and for the life force of his people. He pulled out his phone, his thumb hovering over the encrypted contact for his most loyal captain. He needed a diplomatic cloak to cover his immediate departure, but his mind was already miles away, back in the Obsidian Peaks, preparing to clean house with brutal efficiency. He wouldn't send messages or pleas. He would send action. Rhys understood now that his greatest mistake was believing that duty and destiny could be separated. He had tried to serve his people by sacrificing his mate, only to discover that his mate was the key to their survival. He looked back at the small, glowing window, engraving the sight of Avery and Ethan into his memory. The gold mark was a target, a promise, and a threat. "I will dismantle the walls I built," Rhys murmured, his voice low and ragged, his alpha authority finally fully reinstated, driven by a primal, desperate need. "I will burn the Ironwood Dominion alliance to ash. I will weather the war, but I will not live another night knowing my queen and my heir are exiled." He turned, the smell of salt and ocean replacing the soft scent of his family. He walked away from Crestline Harbor, but unlike 5 years ago, he was not walking toward an empty duty. He was walking toward necessary destruction. He had rejected his true queen for fear of war, and now he realized the only path to salvation was to embrace the carnage, claim the white wolf, and let her gold mark shine over the ruins of his former life. He had spent half a decade ensuring peace. He would spend the rest of his life ensuring destiny. He was coming home, but he was bringing the storm with him. The king was no longer conflicted. He was determined. And Avery, whether she knew it or not, was already his. He just had to conquer the world to prove it. Smash the like button and join the crew.